ride day debrief. In this video, I'm going to basically talk about the day today because I went riding at Thunder Valley with my little brother Colby and hadn't ridden with him in like months, but it was actually really sick because this past weekend, like literally 4 days ago or 5 days ago, was the Pro National. So all the jumps were like super peaky and beefed up, and everything was much bigger than it usually is, which is really sweet. So that was a blast. And I'll definitely throw in some clips into this video of like us riding and stuff so you can kind of see it. But basically, I really wanted to make this video, and I thought of the whole like debrief thing because a lot happened today, like for me, and it was really good, but it could have been not so good. And I'm going to explain why here in just a second. If you don't know me, I'm Logan Lesser, a national motocross racer, having won over 15 state championships and an amateur national championship. I'm an extreme sports athlete and ran a marketing agency for over 4 years, growing it to $30,000 a month. And while doing so, was able to travel the world living in Cape Town, South Africa, part-time throughout the past few years. And I've spent nearly $50,000 on mentors, coaches, courses, and education, learning from the best of the best in business, fitness, mindset, racing, and so on. Now I'm sharing what I've learned and growing my community, the Champion Protocol, linked in the description below. All right, so the reason that I said that it could have gone not so good is because when we got there, it was actually super windy. Like Colby looked at his phone and it said like 19-mile-per-hour gusts. But regardless of what the weather app said, like it was honestly really windy. Like it was literally like some of the gusts shook my truck a little bit. So like it was really windy, which that obviously sucks. Like wind sucks. But I actually made another YouTube video about it, so I won't like dig into it deep in this one. But basically my kind of mentality when it comes to that, and when like shit happens like that and it's super windy or it's raining, it actually ended up raining a little bit as well while we were out there. So we got like a bunch of different things happen. But regardless, like if it rains, if it's windy, hell, I've raced in the snow before, like while it's snowing. And like if there's other people there or whatever, basically just distractions overall. Like I've just got the technique of don't think, just do. Like I just remind myself to trust my instincts and act on my instincts, get in the zone. And whenever I start to like have those thoughts or whatever of like, oh, it's really windy, like what if it blows me around in the air or whatever, I literally just say to myself, like, don't think, just do. Like just follow your process, follow your system to get in the zone, and just trust your instincts. And yeah, so I made a like short little video talking about that. So you can go check that out. So I dig into it a little bit more, but regardless, it was super windy. So I went out for the first session and I felt like shit. I don't know what it was. It was very weird. Like I only went out for a few laps because I got pretty winded because I still haven't been doing really any cardio or anything, and haven't been riding like a whole lot. So I can't do like long motos yet. But regardless, I went out and like I felt just like super timid. Like I don't know what it was. The track was good. Like it was definitely marbly in some areas and stuff, but I was just like riding really timid and kind of just on edge a little bit and just being careful. And what's funny is that Colby kind of came back to the pit and said the same thing. Like he was like, was that kind of weird to you? Like were you kind of timid and riding weird? And I was like, yeah, I was. So it was really weird. So basically I made another video where I dug into this and everything, but it was super windy and the track was by no means like super great condition, you know, like it was technical in terms of slick because it was so dry in a lot of areas. So it was definitely, and all the jumps were like much bigger, and the lips were obviously super peaky and everything from the national. So it was just different, you know, but the big thing was just kind of the condition and then obviously the wind and everything. So basically my mentality when it comes to that and when that happens is I'm like, you know what? I mean, it's not like we're racing or anything like that. So what I do is I slow down a little bit and I just focus on technique. Like that's what I'll focus on for the day is I'll pick a few things that I'm going to specifically focus on for the day and just pay attention to that. Like I'm not focused on going fast or like doing long motos or even sprint motos or whatever, because in my opinion, from my perspective, I just want to take as much of the risk out of it that I can. And when the track condition isn't immaculate and the weather, like it's super windy and stuff, which also makes it pretty sketchy, then like I basically am like, all right, well, I'm not like racing. There's nothing on the line. Like there's no need to like add risk to it. So instead, I'm going to slow it down a bit and just focus on technique because I still want to get the most out of the day possible. Like that's my approach with riding regardless, is like I want to get the most out of every ride day that I possibly can. So basically I just thought about it and I was like, all right, I'm going to focus on these couple things, which I actually talked with Colby about it a bit. Cause like with him obviously being on a team and being so like looking to go pro and everything, he's been doing a lot of work with researching, obviously working with his trainer or his current trainer right now, Robbie Raynard. And just, he watches a lot of videos, podcasts. So I was also curious to kind of pick his brain a little bit. And basically what I decided to do is I wanted to, like, regardless, I wanted to focus on my form and how I ride. And I'll show some video or maybe even some screenshots of like me at the track today and kind of how I was working on it, because I wanted to try and focus on riding more like Jet Lawrence and kind of get into his position, which specifically what I was doing is I was like, all right, like I need to stay on the balls of my feet. And like literally it's the basics, but I forgot who said it, but it was the pros and the experts never stop doing the basics, or like never stop working on the basics, because the basics is the foundation of everything. So basically that's what I was focused on, is I was like, all right, like feet on the pegs, but more specifically keeping my knees behind the foot pegs, or at least aligned with the foot pegs. Regardless, like feet on the balls of my feet and my knees behind the foot pegs. And then also aside from that, like also keeping my head forward, like above the bike, and keeping my arms bent like this and kind of in that attack position. Because if I do that where I have my knees back and then obviously my butt back and everything, but I like stretch out like this, that's what's going to lead to arm pump, because I'm hanging on so tight with my arms. Whereas if I'm like squeezing with my legs and holding myself up like this, then I'm not pulling on my forearm nearly as much, and I'm in a much better position where I can really like handle the bike and everything. So regardless, I wanted to focus on that, which was basically like Jet's form and everything. So I focused on that all day, like making sure to pay attention to that. And the other thing was keeping my finger on the clutch at all times. Now, I've mentioned in multiple videos I don't use the clutch ever, which still the same, like I wasn't using it. However, after talking with Colby, he was basically mentioning how he listened to some podcasts of, I think, like Jet, Sexton, and a lot of guys, and they were talking about how they keep their finger on the clutch all the time. And specifically, one thing that I also need to work on more is using the clutch whenever I shift, because a lot of times, like, I'll struggle to get my shift, so I'll have to like let off the gas for a split second in order to get it, and that's obviously not ideal. Whereas I need to get better at just tapping the clutch quickly so I can get that shift nice and smooth without letting off the throttle. So keeping my finger on the clutch at all times will help with that a lot. So those were the two things that I focused on all day. It was literally just finger on the clutch, not like using it all the time, just finger on it, which I honestly barely ever used it. Like there was maybe a few times where the bike just bogged down a little bit and I would just tap it to kind of give me that boost. So finger on the clutch all the time, and then just like having Jet's form and everything and trying to practice that. So that's what I was focused on. But regardless, like I looked at the situation that we were in terms of the condition of the track, the weather, all those sorts of things. And from my perspective, I was like, today's not the day to be practicing just going super fast and like doing like maybe long motos or sprint motos or whatever and trying to push. Like it's just not the ideal day for that. And that would just add a lot of risk, you know? So it just makes more sense for today to be more of a day where you slow down a bit and just focus on technique and everything. And I just think it's a smarter way to go about it, but that's just my opinion. And then aside from that, what was interesting is that first moto went terrible. Like it was just horrible, like I mentioned earlier in the video. Now the second moto that I went out there, I was obviously practicing the finger on the clutch and my body position. But what was funny is that I never use the clutch, so my finger is usually never even really out there unless I have to grab it super quick because my bike bogged down or I just needed it, kind of like in an emergency or whatever. But aside from that, like I'm always just gripping the grip like this. So it was funny because having my finger out the whole time, like my hand wasn't used to it. So I felt parts of my hand that I hadn't really felt before, like muscles that I hadn't really used or whatever. And it was kind of like, I don't know, it was kind of uncomfortable for a bit. So that second moto was me kind of just getting used to that. But the rest of the day, like the third, fourth, and fifth, and it actually got better in every single one, I seriously got into my flow, got in the zone, and I was feeling really good. And not only that, like I was, and the track wasn't like any better. If anything, it was more dry as the day went on. The wind did end up disappearing, so that was nice. But the track like didn't really get any better. Like it was still dry and it was still tricky in terms of that. But regardless, by focusing on my technique, and I've talked about this in many other videos, how like I just am always paying attention to my technique and I'm always focused on something. And a lot of people are like, why don't you just go have fun sometimes? Just go out there, mess around, blah, blah, blah. What's interesting is I actually have more fun when I do that and I'm focused on technique because I ride better and I ride safer and smoother, and smooth is fast. So like me just going out there and just pushing, like that's when I make mistakes, and that's when I just am riding kind of like all over the place and stuff. Whereas when I'm focused on my technique and everything, I'm actually riding way smoother and faster, and I'm in more control, and overall it's way more fun, and it's a lot easier to like click into the zone and get into my flow that way. And that's exactly what happened today. So that's like the main reason I wanted to make this video, is because like on a day where that first moto could have just like thrown me off for the rest of the day, and I could have been like, the weather sucks, it's super windy, the track is shit, like it's sketchy, I felt like crap, like blah blah blah, like then my day is ruined and I'm not going to get anything out of it. But instead I just approached it and I was like, all right, today's not the day to be like pushing, so I'm just going to slow it up a bit. I'm going to focus on these specific things with technique, and that's all I'm going to focus on the rest of the day. And that's literally what I did. And in those last few motos, I still did the same thing. Like I still was focused on those, that technique, and like I wasn't focused on pushing. But it was funny because like I just felt better and better as the day went on. I was going faster and faster. I was pushing harder and harder because I was just getting more and more comfortable, and I was getting more into the zone and everything. And it was funny because pretty much the whole family came out there. Like my mom ended up coming out there. I was with Colby, my brother, and then my dad and my grandma all came out to watch. And it was funny because I think it was the third or fourth moto that I got off the track, and my dad had just got there, like when I went out, and like I was riding out when he was driving in, so I hadn't said anything to him yet. And when I got off the track, he actually commented, and he was like, he said something like, man, like you're looking really good, like be careful, track is a little sketchy, it's windy and stuff, like don't push too much. And not trying to sound arrogant, I'm just like, this is literally what happened. I told him, I was like, that's amazing, because I'm not pushing. Like I'm probably a 70-80% in terms of pushing at my best. And I explained to him that I was focusing on like these particular technique things, and he was like, your technique looks great, like your form looks great out there, but yeah, you definitely looked like you were moving and going pretty fast. So and I just found it funny because like I wasn't even focused on that at all. Like I wasn't trying to push, I wasn't trying to go fast, but because I was in like such good form and I had good technique and I was practicing those things, I was riding way smoother, way safer, way more in control, which actually led to me riding faster when I wasn't even trying to. Whereas if I would have tried to push and tried to go fast and wasn't focused on those things, that's where I probably would have been more out of control, made a lot more mistakes. And on a day like today, when it's super windy and the track is a little sketchy already, like that's just where it gets pretty dangerous and you can really fuck up. So overall, that's kind of what I want to talk about in this little video. So hopefully you liked the ride day debrief. I'll do more of these if you want, so comment below if you liked it. But yeah, I mean, in summary, just honestly, focusing on technique and always focusing on something when you ride is a game changer. And aside from that, just be like, from my perspective and in my opinion, I think it's really good to be smart when you're practicing and training and stuff, where you kind of analyze the situation and you look at the conditions that you've been given or the cards that you've been dealt, and then you just play the best hand that you can. Which today I was dealt, the track was obviously a bit sketchy, dry, marbly in some areas, and then it was also super windy for the first half of the day. So I basically was like, all right, well, I still want to get the most out of it, and so I'm just going to focus on technique. So I just think that's a good way to approach it and everything. Whereas in the past, what I would do is I'd be like, oh, it's windy, it's sketchy, the track sucks, like I feel super sketchy, like this is a waste of a day, waste of gas, blah blah blah, and then my day's thrown away. It's useless. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful, but I'll end it there before I ramble on anymore. But if you liked the video, then feel free to subscribe for more stuff like this, And also, if you're a racer, definitely check out my free community linked in the description below. I'm currently working on a lot of really killer stuff that's going to be added into there, like as course material and everything, where I dig into a lot of this stuff in very deep detail, specifically like getting in the zone, mastering your dark side, all those sorts of things. It's really good stuff. So definitely go ahead and hop in there. It's free. And yeah, with that being said, I will see you in the next video. Peace.